India's judiciary has been thrown into a dizzy amid allegations of corruption in the court, and the collegium once again stands accused of protecting its own. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. A judge of the High Court, Justice Yashwant Varma, finds himself under the scanner after a complaint about a fire at his home led to the discovery of a huge pile of cash, unaccounted cash, at his residence. What would happen if this was any other person but a judge? Well, an investigation, an inquiry, a possible criminal case, any range of options. What happened with Justice Varma? Well, Justice Varma was simply transferred to the Allahabad High Court, where the president of the Bar Association has asked, is the Allahabad High Court a dustbin? And in fact, the Allahabad High Court Bar Association head has gone on to say that if an ordinary person was found with even 15 lakhs at his home, he would be possibly facing termination of his job and criminal action. In this case, a judge, and he's used the figure of 15 crores. We haven't heard that figure anywhere else, but the Allahabad High Court Bar Association president has used this figure, maybe colloquially. He's saying 15 lakh employee की घर मिलता है, so they're terminated. 15 crore judge की घर मिलता है, then उनकी घर वापसी हो जाती है. What is actually going on? What this leads to is the collegium system coming under ferocious scanner and scrutiny again. What should have happened in this case and what can still happen? Justice Varma did not sit in his court today. He is on leave. We do not yet know if the leave is indefinite. We do not yet have any official response from the collegium. Let me introduce our guests on the program today as we look at a case that has brought serious disrepute to the reputation of India's courts and judges. Joining me now is Justice Banerjee. Justice Banerjee, of course, has been Chief Justice of both the Madras and the Meghalaya High Court. Good to see you, sir. Welcome to the program. And also joining me is Sanjoy Ghose, a senior advocate. We also had Justice A.K. Ganguly, former judge of the Supreme Court, trying his luck to connect with us. His internet hasn't worked, but maybe he will come through as the program rolls along. Justice Banerjee, there's a sense that everybody tends to protect their own, right? Journalists protect journalists, soldiers protect soldiers, lawyers protect lawyers, doctors protect doctors, and judges, it seems, are now trying to protect judges. This case is reported, the cash discovery is reported to have taken place as far back as Holi. We are now towards the end of March. The judge has been transferred to the Allahabad High Court. Is that the appropriate response from the collegium, from the Supreme Court? What else could it have done if not?
There are two things, Barkha. First is we just have a set of allegations now. We don't have confirmed facts. Second, it is too early to castigate the collegium and say it has taken no action. Of course, I don't agree with the policy of transfer because as Supreme Court judgments instruct, that transfer is not a mode of punishment. The euphemism used in such cases is for better administration of justice, but in many cases, transfer is used as one of the modes of punishment. What should have been done was, and I'm sure it is going to be done, start an independent inquiry into the allegations and then ascertain until such time that these allegations are proved or disproved or whatever, the judge should not be permitted to perform any judicial work. That is generally what should happen. It happened in the case of Justice V. Ramaswamy of the Supreme Court. It also happened in the case of at least 2 or 3 judges in the Bombay High Court who ultimately resigned when Justice Chitatosh Mukherjee was the Chief Justice of that court. In Justice Ramaswamy's case, it was not an allegation of corruption. It was a misuse of power by spending much more in decorating his official quarters than was permissible. But this, if unaccounted for cash, and we do not know to what extent has been found, it calls for an in-depth inquiry and the matter taken to its logical conclusion.
So may I ask you, Justice Banerjee, you're saying, and it's correct, that we don't know the facts. Nobody has come out and spoken officially. We don't even know how much money was recovered, though there have been some comments, as I mentioned, from the Allahabad Bar Association president, and I do not know if he used that number as a metaphor, as a colloquialism, or as an actuality. But should the collegium not have announced, at the very least, that this judge has been suspended. Judge has been sent on leave pending inquiry. See,
No,
when you just
the
say,
collegium does not have the authority to do that.
okay,
Really. There are certain things that are done. It's the Chief Justice of the concerned High Court who is the
hmm,
master of the roster over there. Of course, indirectly, the collegium can. And nowadays, a lot of things are done by the Supreme Court without really having the constitutional authority for it. But the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court could have been persuaded to ensure that no judicial work was assigned to this judge till such time his name was cleared or an inquiry was conducted. That could have been one of the steps taken.
okay, and the correction is that that needs to come from the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court and
That
not from
needs
the Supreme and not from the collegium.
not may not be from the collegium. The collegium may persuade, but that have to come from the. In fact, Chief Justice Shobhashasi Mukherjee suspended all judicial work to Justice V. Ramaswamy pending the inquiry against him.
Right. Justice Ganguly, I don't know if you can hear me. Good evening, sir. Can you hear me, sir? Could we unmute Justice Ganguly? Yeah, Justice Ganguly, good evening.
Good evening. Yes, I
Yes, go ahead,
agree.
sir.
I agree with Justice Banerjee, and there is a precedent. I think Justice Banerjee should remember Justice Chittosh Mukherjee, Chief Justice of Calcutta High Court, when he went to Bombay as Chief Justice, he did the same thing in cases of allegation against judges. He prevented them from functioning as judges, denied them the roster. This was done. And I tell you, one thing the collegium must remember as a constitutional authority, that the Supreme Court has no constitutional superintendence over a High Court. This power the Supreme Court doesn't have, because High Court as a constitutional authority is not subordinate to Supreme Court. But in a matter of this description, the Supreme Court can certainly request the Chief Justice of the concerned High Court to take such steps as are, if I may say, so consistent with principles of justice and fairness. And one of them is to deny roster to the learned judge, and followed by an in-depth inquiry, and then follow the steps which are provided under the Constitution.
So both of you agree that the judge should be, there should be an in-depth inquiry. The master of the roster can say that this judge will not be hearing any cases. He will not be sitting in his court. But there is the matter, sir, of public perception. There is the matter of the credibility of the court. Someone needs to communicate what both of you are saying. This has not been communicated to the public, to the legal fraternity, to the lawyers. Instead, what we see in the media is a route, what seems to be, oh, he's been found with unaccounted cash, he's been transferred to the Allahabad High Court. That doesn't augur well for the judiciary, does it, Justice Ganguly?
I tell you, for a judge of the High Court, transfer is never a penal measure, cannot be a penal measure, because many judges are transferred. Say presently, I must tell you, give you an example of Justice Joymallo Bagchi, who's been taken to Supreme Court. He was also transferred. Now, if transfer is taken as a penal measure, which is thought to be done in this case, then it will have a different perception about many judges who are transferred, not for penal measure. Many judges were transferred. Justice Banerjee was transferred, I was transferred, not for penal measure, but for some other reasons. Maybe they want us to go to another high court for a better administration of justice. That is the avowed principle. But to transfer a judge by of a penal measure it will give a wrong signal to many judges who are transferred, but not by a penal measure. This is something which the Supreme Court collegium should be careful about.
Right. Now, the
And
thing is that,
I will
yeah,
tell you one thing. In the K. Veeraswamy's case, Supreme Court Constitution Bench said that a judge is subject to the provisions of Prevention of Corruption Act. A judge is a public servant, and coming within the definition of Section 21 of the Indian IPC, and presently Section 2 by subsection 28 of the present law.
yeah.
So he's a public servant. In a case of,
Let,
the allegations are so shocking. I'm not saying whether the allegations are true or not. I'm not going into it. But prima facie, the allegations are so shocking.
Justice Ganguly and Justice Banerjee, before Sanjoy comes in, do you believe the judiciary, whether it's the Chief Justice of the High Court or the Supreme Court Collegium, has handled this as it should have been handled, given the hazy facts that we know so far, which are media reports of unaccounted cash? Justice Ganguly, you first. Has this been handled appropriately?
The judge should have been heard. I don't know whether he has been heard by the collegium. The judge should have been heard. You should hear the judge first. You must get his explanation on an oral hearing. It may not be a kind of show cause or elaborate thing. The judge should have been heard. He must present his side of the story, whatever it is. And then the state should follow. As I have agreed with Justice Banerjee, Chief Justice Banerjee, that such steps should be taken by the master of the roster. And the master of the roster in this case is the Chief Justice of the concerned High Court. You remember the steps taken by those 4 senior most judges against the then Chief Justice of Supreme Court, a kind of a press interview dealing with the roster determination. So the roster is a very vital aspect in the administration of justice. You remember that. Those 4 judges.
Just as we're speaking, I'm so sorry. Can we scroll up and can we get the right banner up on this? We just have a statement from the Supreme Court. I was just saying that there has been no statement, but actually we do have a statement. We need to move to the top of this page. I'm not able to read it. I need to go to the top of the page. Right. There is misinformation and rumors being spread with regard to the incident at the residence of Mr. Justice Yashwant Varma. The in-house inquiry procedure set up and prescribed. I don't know who's given this statement. I need somebody to tell me who has issued the statement. If I can be please told before I read this, who has given this statement in my ear, please, if somebody can speak to me. Who has given this statement?
We do not know.
Okay, it's a Supreme Court press release. All right. So this is the Supreme Court press release, and I'm just going to read this out. There is misinformation and rumors being spread with regard to the incident at the residence of Mr. Justice Yashwant Varma. The in-house inquiry procedure set up and prescribed by the Supreme Court in the Ravichandran Iyer versus Justice A.M. Bhattacharjee case is available on the website of the Supreme Court of India. Can we move up, please? And then it goes on to quote various cases. Scroll up, please. Let's come to the operative part. Yeah. On receiving the information, the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court commenced the in-house inquiry procedure. So we are getting a confirmation that an in-house inquiry procedure was begun by the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court. The Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, who had commenced his inquiry prior to the collegium meeting on 20th March, will be supporting his report to the Chief Justice of India. Yes, submitting today, the date that we're talking on. Please move up on the statement. Please move up on the statement, please. Move up, please. Scroll up. The report will be, I lost it here. I'm not able to read it, but the operative part of it is simply that the transfer, this is the important part, the proposal for the transfer, who is the second senior most judge, need that statement back, guys. I need that statement back. That was the operative part. But basically, the argument that seems to be made, Sanjoy, is that the transfer and the inquiry are not related. So I'm going to read this again. The proposal for the transfer of Mr. Justice Yashwant Varma, who is the second senior most judge in the Delhi High Court and a member of the collegium, to his parent High Court, where he will be 9th in seniority, is independent and separate from the in-house inquiry procedure. The proposal was examined by the collegium comprising of the Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges, and thereafter letters were written to the consulting judges of the Supreme Court. So we do have some more details, and we had just a few moments ago. I want to bring in Sanjoy Ghose now. Sanjoy, what we're hearing is that the inquiry was commenced by the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, and the transfer is separate to that. Your responses?
Yeah. Okay, so just to decode the government language of that collegium
yes.
handout, what they're basically saying is don't connect the transfer with the in-house inquiry procedure. The transfer is independent, and basically it is trying to, the Supreme Court, if I may understand myself, is trying to meet the violent criticism it has been facing since morning, that how can transfer be the punishment or the penalty or the consequence of such alleged egregious misconduct. Now, as the two justices have told you, and that is the law, transfer is never a penalty. So that is the Supreme Court trying to say, please don't connect the transfer with this. But let me also join in agreement with the learned judges who spoke before me. In fact, I don't know whether you know, just before I joined your program, there was a sensational statement given by the Delhi Fire Services.
Oh, I don't know that. Let's pull that out, guys.
Just ask your team to Google it just now. The Delhi Fire Services has said that that we did not find any cash when we went there. So it gets murkier. So to decode the rest of that that handout from the Supreme Court, what it is saying is that we have commenced an in-house procedure. Now, your viewers, just to again, it's constitutional jargon, but to simplify it, the Constitution has a different procedure, which is called the procedure of impeachment. Okay, so if 50 members of Rajya Sabha or 100 members of Lok Sabha make a resolution for impeachment, then that motion can carry with 2/3 members of each house sitting and voting. Now, in that impeachment, a different kind of inquiry procedure is there. That inquiry procedure is provided under the Judges Inquiry Act, and that's a different procedure. Now, what this procedure, the Supreme Court handout is talking about, is an in-house procedure which the Supreme Court evolved on its own.
Yeah. Sanjoy, you're frozen.
Has been following in all these cases that have been coming up since 1999. In that in-house procedure, the first thing the Supreme Court Chief Justice does is it asks the Chief Justice of the relevant High Court to first give a report. And for that report, obviously, the Chief Justice has to ask the particular judge to give an explanation. So that's where the natural justice, the version of the judge, comes into play. Now, with the report of the Chief Justice taking the explanation from the concerned judge, that is forwarded by the High Court Chief Justice to Chief Justice of India. The Chief Justice of India then examines the report, and if that report is found satisfactory, that's the end of the matter. If it is not satisfactory, then the Chief Justice sets up what is called this in-house procedure. For a High Court non-Chief Justice, that is an ordinary Justice of the High Court, this procedure will have a committee, an inquiry committee of 2 Chief Justices of 2 different High Courts and a judge of another High Court. So this 3-member committee will then conduct an inquiry where this judge can make his version of the case, it can examine other witnesses, and then that committee makes a report to the Chief Justice. That report, if it finds guilt of the judge, then the Chief Justice will recommend to the government to initiate impeachment proceedings. And in between, what happens, as both the justices told you, it is left to the concerned Chief Justice. And it's very important to understand, the Supreme Court can't boss over High Courts. The High Courts are technically their own bosses. So it is the Chief Justice of the High Court who can then deny judicial work by simply saying that, brother, during this time, I am not assigning you any judicial duties. So it is a kind of, what we use in administrative law, suspension, whereas, these are high constitutional officers, so you can't suspend a High Court judge, but you can certainly deny him judicial work. So that's the procedure of how it follows. So I was just explaining to you.
So I want to, in the meantime, play out a very angry statement that has come from the head of the Allahabad Bar Association, saying that, why have you sent him here? And even if it's true that the inquiry has commenced and the inquiry is separate from the transfer, it's not clear why the transfer has happened, as opposed to simply maybe asking the judge to go and leave till an inquiry, this in-house inquiry, is complete. And I want everybody to respond to that. But first, let's listen to the Allahabad High Court President of the Bar Association.
एक सामान्य कर्मचारी के घर पे 15 लाख रुपया मिलता है तो उसको जेल भेजते हैं। एक जज के घर पे 15 करोड़ रुपया कैश मिल रहा है, उसको घर वापसी का इनाम दिया जा रहा है। क्या हाईकोर्ट, इलाहाबाद हाईकोर्ट क्या डस्टबिन है, कचरा बिन है? करप्शन के खिलाफ हाईकोर्ट बार बिल्कुल स्ट्रांग फुटिंग पे खड़ा है। हम उसका स्वागत यहां नहीं होने देंगे। उनका ज्वाइनिंग अगर होती है, वी विल साइन द हाईकोर्ट, लॉयर्स विल एब्सटेन फ्रॉम वर्क।
Lawyers will abstain from work is the threat there. I want Justice Ganguly, Justice Banerjee to come in. The point is, why the transfer? Even if the transfer is separate from the inquiry, even if the inquiry has begun, Justice Ganguly, by the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, why did he have to be transferred? That part is not clear to anybody. If a transfer is
I,
not a penal response, why the transfer? The transfer could not have taken place without the consent of the collegium. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
yes, but here with great respect to the collegium of the Honorable Supreme Court, I would say that transferring the judge may give a wrong signal, as it has given in this case.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
first, transfer is not a penal measure. Number two, but in this case, however you may say, the transfer is independent of the inquiry, but people will connect the two, as has been done by the Allahabad High Court bar president. People will connect the two. That is the common perception. The best thing should have been, as was suggested initially just by Chief Justice Banerjee before me, that
Yeah.
request the Honorable Chief Justice of Delhi High Court to take such measures as are consistent with principles of justice and fair play. Deny him roster for a couple of months, a couple of weeks before the entire procedure is sorted out. That would have been a better situation, because now the bar is in a firm, and in Allahabad bar, they are up against this. They are saying we are not dustbin to be dumped with
So
this
the
kind of material.
transfer, the
And
transfer is a decision.
the judge's reputation, which is what the learned judge will face there. You are sending him to a very hostile court. What will he face there? How can he
Justice
function there?
Ganguly, the transfer was a mistake in the
In a way,
circumstances.
I would say is improper. Is improper, not prudent. I
Yeah.
can't I can't say stronger words in the Supreme Court. Not it's not is improper and not prudent in the
Uh,
situation, because other options are open.
Justice
Since
Banerjee, do
other
you
options
agree?
are open.
Got it. Got it. Justice Banerjee, do you agree? It appears now that the Delhi Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, I beg your pardon, has begun his in-house inquiry. I am befuddled if an in-house inquiry has begun and the results of that inquiry are not known, and a transfer is not a punishment, because transfer as a punishment would be in disrespect for the court that you're sending the judge to, then by definition, the collegium has fumbled in proceeding with the transfer. The collegium should
Let me
have
let
not
me
proceeded with the transfer.
let me clarify on the basis of the press release issued by the
Yes,
Supreme Court. The impression that I get is that there was already a process in place for the transfer of this judge, and this
I
incident
see.
came up.
I
Now
see.
that
That the
that
transfer was before this incident.
yes. That's why
Yeah,
they say don't link it to it. If that is it, then I think the press release has to indicate much more, because the perception is now that he's just been got rid of because of
that's
this.
right. That's
The
right.
press release kind of makes it even more ominous. The
Correct.
second thing is, one could have understood the collegium saying that here an inquiry is there. If the judge sits in the same court where the inquiry is taking place, it might interfere with the inquiry. Therefore, we are shifting him, and we'll think of further steps. That could have been a measure. But, to justify the transfer by way of a press release in the wake of the storm that has been created, and to suggest that there was a previous process in place by which he was being sought to be transferred, and therefore you should not connect the two, it kind of, makes
Yeah.
the matter murkier than ever.
Now, Sanjoy, interestingly, the one thing that political parties that agree on nothing tend to agree on is on the powers of the collegium. So, no surprise then that the BJP and the Congress have both been targeting in different sets of comments on social media. The judge, the Congress is saying, "Paisa aaya kahan se? Who gave the money?" The BJP is linking it to other judgments, and this is very dangerous. The BJP spokespeople are actually linking the unaccounted reports of unaccounted cash to judgments pronounced on by the judge. There's Amit Malviya's tweet. Justice Varma had halted the CBI investigation into corruption allegations against Shibu Soren as directed by the Lokpal. He doesn't say more, but the implication, the innuendo there is quite clear. Um, we have seen before Parliament uniting on how judges should be appointed. The collegium is now under the scanner again, and the collegium has done itself no favors by not communicating clearly.
Absolutely. In fact, I have tweeted about this, that it is, in the last 11 years, I'm not bound by the judicial discipline the former judges are, so I can be more brutal with what is happening.
Yeah.
In the last 11 years, the collegium has completely abdicated its responsibility in protecting. The reason for the collegium system was to get independent and meritorious judges appointed. Now, in the last 11 years, this collegium, when I say this collegium, the institutions, so several people have over time peopled this collegium. They have completely, utterly surrendered their independence. It has become a clearing house where you clear your nominees, the government clears its nominees, and it's actually a give and take kind of exchange where it's not merit, but my person and your person thing happens. In fact, the collegium recommendations are now, and I can say it in public, what people actually will hesitate to say. There is a perception that there is a prior vetting done even before the collegium actually makes the formal recommendation, which was not supposed to be the constitutional understanding in the judge's case. To explain in non-legalese to your viewers, the collegium is supposed to decide and give it to the government. Now what happens is, informally, the judges take a green signal from the government and only then make the proposition. Even then, after that, they sit for months. For example, if the collegium makes 5 recommendations, the government picks and chooses 2 or 3. They don't follow the seniority. And the collegium sits mum and does nothing. Before the collegium, I'll deal with these 2 issues quickly. As I said, the motive was independence and merit. So let me first deal with independence. Before the collegium system, you had judges who have held many of central government and state government laws as unconstitutional. You've had judges who have violently disagreed with the Prime Minister when Prime Minister Nehru wanted to supersede Justice Mahajan, Justice Vivian Bose, and all of them said, we will resign from the Supreme Court if you interfere with our system. The same thing was with Patanjali Shastri. Under the pre-collegium system, you had a Jagmohan Sinha, judge of Allahabad High Court, unseat a sitting prime minister in an election dispute, as you know, of Rajanarayan versus Indira Nehru Gandhi. So that is the independence the collegium, pre-collegium judges showed. Now, merit. Pre-collegium, you had judges like Vivian Bose, Patanjali Shastri, Subba Rao, H.R. Khanna, and the lawyers will understand, but these are great jurists who have held.
But Sanjoy, you've used a very precise time frame, 11 years.
Yes, of course. I won't blame it only for this particular government, because, as you know, all the political parties are united on this. But,
exactly.
But the surrender has been more blatant in the last 11 years than it was post-collegium. So collegium system comes in the 90s, but it goes on. It becomes more blatant thereafter. And now it is completely and utterly surrendered. As you know, recently there was, since we are dealing with Delhi High Court, which is my parent High Court, the collegium had recommended a lady judge, appointment of a lady candidate as a judge. She's a National Law School student. She's an expert in her field, and she's in fact the highest earning lawyer who was willing to sacrifice her entire career and become a judge for the sake of public service. Now, for reasons best known, that name, despite having been accepted by the collegium and recommended, has just been put on the back burner, and the other names have been recommended, and the collegium is doing nothing. The government is saying nothing, and that's the way it is going. So that is the elephant in the room, that today we have a rotten, broken system, and everyone is scared. Very few people are willing to speak out, and we are hurtling towards absolute disaster.
Well, here's the point, Justice Ganguly. If the collegium has surrendered independence, and I want to just take a look at this statement, because I am intrigued by Justice Banerjee's argument that maybe what the Supreme Court is saying is that the transfer had been put into motion well before this complaint came up. Can we just go full frame to this for a second? I'm not able to read it if you display it like this. You need to go full frame to it. So, look, it says the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court commenced the inquiry No, you guys change it too quickly. I'm not able to read it. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't say on which date the inquiry began. The Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, who had commenced his inquiry prior to the collegium meeting on 20th March, will be submitting his report to the Chief Justice of India today, that is 21st March. The report will be examined and processed for further and necessary action. I understand now what Justice Banerjee is saying, Justice Ganguly. I think what they're trying to say through this rather confusing statement is the collegium was meeting anyway, and this transfer was taking place.
No, no.
And it just
Let me just say what I think Justice Banerjee is absolutely right. What it's trying to allude is that the proposal for transfer of this judge was already being considered. It's just that they fast-tracked it when this incident came out.
Exactly. So the question is, Sanjoy, please, if I'm reading this legally is wrong, please correct me. What I'm understanding is they must have been aware that this has happened, but they proceeded anyway with this transfer that may have been operationalized, the process of which may have been operationalized prior to this incident.
Yes,
They
it was
could have
fast-tracked. It was fast-tracked because of this incident.
they could have halted the transfer. No, they could have said, we'll take
Yes,
no decision on this
yes,
judge.
yes.
That's the
They
point,
should have,
right? They could
they
have,
should have held
yeah.
it
So
back.
Justice Ganguly, let's bring you
They
in.
should have held it back,
Yeah,
considering the situation that the
yeah,
Delhi High Court Chief Justice has already commenced an inquiry. They should have held it back and taken the Chief Justice of Delhi High Court into confidence
yeah,
about this whole entire situation instead of rushing with the transfer. And now the transfer has created serious situation in Allahabad High Court. Another High Court is being disturbed, and
yeah.
there this learned judge is going to face a very rough situation. This is not
Yeah.
going to improve. Going is not conducive to judicial administration.
I also think, Justice
To,
Banerjee,
to
yeah,
disturb
sorry.
another High Court by your order of transfer.
I think all three of you agree that this transfer, even if the transfer is not a response to the finding to this complaint, which is what I think the Supreme Court statement is trying to say, the transfer is not a response to this. The transfer was not frozen. The transfer was not held in abeyance. That is what I think all of you are saying could have happened. Instead, it was, as Sanjoy Ghosh says, fast tracked. Now, the question is also, Justice Banerjee, the complete lack of transparency. We're all speculating. We don't know what money, how much money, what circumstances, what is this amount? We don't even know the amount. There should have been some transparent elucidation of the facts as we know them. In the absence of that, there's all kinds of theory bazi right now.
That there are two things to this aspect. There's an inquiry, preliminary inquiry by the Delhi High Court Chief Justice. I don't think it is appropriate for any facts to be referred to, whether by the Supreme Court or by any other authority, at least prior to such preliminary report being filed. After the preliminary report, what the collegium does is a different matter. And some of this, as they say, should be out in the public because sunlight is the best disinfectant.
That's right.
There is corruption in the judiciary, and let's not deny it. Let's not sweep it under the carpet. But the insinuation that I find in some of your conversation with Mr. Ghosh is that let's scrap the collegium system. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. If the collegium system had not been there, today we would have had a complete different Supreme Court filled with, the salas of politicians maybe. But it was necessary at that point of time. We've suffered several very weak Chief Justices of India in the recent past. Very, very weak Chief Justices of India who've genuflected before the executive and who've danced to the tune of the executive for probably their personal benefits. And that is something that should be kept in mind when you go about deciding who should come in what seniority. As Mr. Ghosh has indicated, the seniority which is planned by the judiciary is often disrupted by the government, and the judiciary should put its foot down. The collegium should put its foot down and say, you clear the entire list, or you indicate why you're not clearing, and we will not allow a part of the list to be cleared and a part to be withheld. But that kind of boldness or backbone has not been shown, because there are skeletons in many cupboards. And
you're making a big statement, Justice Banerjee. You are saying, and I
yes,
want to quote it
yes,
back.
I am.
You actually, you have gone further than Sanjoy Ghosh's insinuation. You are actually saying there have been very, very weak Chief Justices of India in recent years who have genuflected before the government and have not shown the boldness that is demanded or asked of the role of a Chief Justice of that position.
Yes.
And I mean, I won't put you on the spot by asking you to name names, but obviously you're quite disillusioned over the recent years. I'm just keeping it open.
That goes with the caveat that But why was not Mr. Shanti Bhushan's envelope opened, where he indicated several Chief Justices of India and several other judges, maybe of the Supreme Court, who he was willing to risk his fame and his liberty by naming who he found was corrupt? Why was not that dealt with? Wasn't it expected of the Supreme Court? It was there in an envelope, closed envelope, submitted.
Yeah. Before
These are matters that we need to, reflect on.
Before Sanjay Ghosh responds, and I need to take last comments, Justice Ganguly, do you agree with Justice Banerjee that we've had very, very weak Chief Justices of India in recent years? He's not being specific, but you can read between the lines.
Yes, Mr. Ghose has talked about Mr. Bijan Mukherjee and Pandit Nehru.
Yeah.
Compared to these stalwarts, there is trust deficit today in the mind of common men about the way the collegium system functions. I don't want to name any particular gentleman, but these two gentlemen have been named. One is Pandit Nehru, the other is the upright stand taken by Chief Justice Bijan Mukherjee. They were men of a different genre. I mean, we don't get them today amongst us. It's very difficult.
Yeah. Sanjoy, sorry, I just want to bring it Sanjoy. Are you're not advocating for a removal of the collegium system, are you, as Justice Banerjee perceives?
Well, as of the collegium, I want to say something. In fact, I don't know whether you know and your viewers know that Justice Banerjee was one of the very, very hands-on chiefs in Madras. He was well respected and he was passing bold orders. So it's your guess is as good as mine as to why suddenly he was removed from a court, which is a presidency court, and packed off to Meghalaya, and why such a competent and honest judge was not brought to the Supreme Court. So exactly. So the bar sees everything. Like Justice Banerjee, we know Justice Muralidhar for his orders, strong orders, and what happened with him. He was transferred from Delhi to Punjab and then ultimately to Orissa. So even transfers being used today in today's day and age with the consent and often at the direction of the executive. This is the extent to which the judiciary has surrendered. Please understand. And if I am speaking to defend the judiciary, to defend the independence of the judiciary. And if we only defend, we have the saying, dharmo rakshate rakshitaha, that if we defend the dharma, only then dharma will protect us. And we are not fighting to defend the judiciary because we want the judges to be great. We are defending the judiciary because only if the judges are independent will they be able to do true justice to the people of India, which the constitution framers actually conceived of and thought of. And that is the problem that we are facing today. And that is a crisis of confidence. It is not a question of one judge and one inquiry. This, in fact, is just a tip of the iceberg.
So what should happen now? What should happen next? Before I give Justice Banerjee the last word, because you made a comment about his transfer, from you and Justice Ganguly, Sanjoy, what happens now? The waters have been muddied. We have this confused sort of statement from the Supreme Court, where it basically says that the two events are separate, the transfer and the in-house inquiry. Right? What now?
Look, what is happening is we have the most extremes. Under the previous Chief Justice, we had excessive publicity. Under this present Chief Justice, who's a very publicity-shy person or media-shy person, we have no outreach of the Supreme Court. So, the Supreme Court needs to find a midway to deal with this. We live in a new media age. We live in an information age. And information travels, things become viral in seconds. So therefore, the court has to engage the public. The court cannot have that old ivory tower concept. You cannot use the concept. You cannot use a media leak to do your job. You have to officially bite the bullet and say what is happening, what is rotten in the state of Denmark, and then deal with it. So that is the solution. The court has to be more proactive. The court has to be more interactive. And as the judges said, that sunlight and about sunlight and transparency, that sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Justice Ganguly, what next? This statement may not be enough. This statement may have muddied waters further. Justice Ganguly?
Which statement?
The one we read out, where they said that the inquiry and the transfer, the Supreme Court has said that the inquiry and the transfer are not connected. That statement.
This is what I've said. There is a trust deficit today. I can't use stronger expression. There's a trust deficit. When people read it, they don't accept it as something which is transparent and something which is really a proper step taken by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Even if it is the transfer was a decision prior to the inquiry, they should have held it back.
Absolutely.
Considering this development, they should have held it back.
Absolutely. I think we have some consensus in this conversation. Just Banerjee, the last word to you. Your example was cited by Sanjoy as somebody.
Let's not make it personal. It's that the collegium system has to be augmented. It has to be bettered. It has to be more transparent. It has to involve consultation with the government, of course, the government of the day, the executive. But you cannot use this incident to scrap the collegium system altogether and have, some other where the political executive, has its own say. So we need to improve the system, and it starts to come from within. There were certain memoranda of procedure which had been talked of. Particularly, a lot of work had been done in this area by Justice Lokur, and seniors like him may not be sitting judges only. Seniors like him, other wise heads who've been in the judiciary, should kind of formulate a way of carrying it forward and making the collegium system ultimately result in meritorious and appropriate people being appointed as judges, whether in the high courts or in the Supreme Courts. And that should be the effort.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Justice Ganguly, I was going to close. Do you want to add something?
May I just add one sentence? I feel personally and feel it very strongly that Justice Sanjiv Banerjee should have been in Supreme Court. There is no reason why he should not have been there. I mean, I tell it very, very seriously. Number one. And number two, the collegium system cannot be changed for something which will be worse. It will be out of the frying pan to the fire.
Yes. Sanjoy, you wanted to add on Justice Banerjee, who's being diffident and saying don't personalize it, but go ahead, Sanjoy.
Well, again, that shows the quality of the judge, and these are the kind of judges we want. He doesn't want to make his case because, again, he is more interested in the system than in the individual, which we all are. I just cited as example to make a case. We can cite 4-5 examples. Transfer orders have been passed, and because the government didn't like it, the transfer order has not been given effect to for months and years. Then transfer orders have been passed, they've been given effect to within a day. So, what is happening? What is going on?
So, Justice Banerjee, I understand that you don't want to talk about yourself, but both the other guests on this program feel very strongly about what happened to you. Let me ask you the question in a different way. Does a judge like yourself or Justice Muralidhar end up feeling cynical about having been a judge?
The system is much bigger than an individual. And if you've taken the oath of becoming a judge, ambition should be the last thing on your mind. You get what you deserve. At the end of the day, I'm happy that my peers considered me not good enough, and I have to rest with that. My feelings have no place.
Well, I have to say, as both of them have said, that makes you a rare person in the sort of publicity saturated times that we live in. But thank you for your comments. I think all of you have been extremely blunt. The transfer, this is the bottom line. Even if the transfer had been operationalized before this came to light, the collegium could have halted this transfer. There could have been clearer and more specific communication with the public. Media leaks with hazy information, half information, is only going to hurt the credibility of the judiciary. No, we are not suggesting that politicians should appoint judges instead, but the judiciary is doing itself no favors with a crisis like this one. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Sanjoy, Ghose, Justice Ganguly, Justice Banerjee, thank you. And to our audience, thank you. Namaskar. See you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.